The day Chief Emmanuel Okafor was buried, everyone thought they were attending the funeral of one of Lagos's most respected businessmen. No one knew they were about to witness a family secret worth 100 million naira. As the priest finished his prayers, the family stood silently around the polished mahogany coffin. Tears rolled down faces, but not every tear was genuine. Some mourned a father, others mourned the fortune they believed they were about to inherit. Then something unusual happened. The family's lawyer slowly walked toward Adaeze, the youngest daughter, and handed her a worn brown envelope. Immediately, whispers spread through the crowd. Why her? What's inside that envelope? Even her two older brothers couldn't hide their curiosity. Adaeze didn't open it. Instead, she held it tightly against her chest, as if it contained her entire future. What nobody standing there knew was that she had been protecting that envelope, and the secret inside it, for almost 3 months, and keeping that promise had already cost her almost everything. 3 months earlier, life couldn't have looked more different. Every morning before sunrise, Adaeze boarded a crowded bus from Surulere to Victoria Island, where she worked at her father's company. Despite being the daughter of the founder, she lived nothing like the wealthy lifestyle everyone imagined. Her apartment was small, her rent was overdue. Sometimes she skipped breakfast just to save enough money for transport. She refused to ask her father for financial help because she wanted to build her own life. Whenever people discovered she was Chief Emmanuel's daughter, they laughed. "If your father is that rich, why are you living like this?" Adaeze would simply smile. "My father taught me that wealth is earned before it is enjoyed." Meanwhile, her two brothers lived completely different lives. Emeka drove a brand new Range Rover. Chinedu spent weekends in expensive clubs and constantly posted luxury vacations online. To them, money wasn't something to protect. It was something to display. Inside the company, employees respected Chief Emmanuel more than they feared him. He had built Okafor Holdings from a tiny spare parts shop into one of Lagos's fastest-growing manufacturing companies. Everyone believed one of his sons would eventually take over. Almost nobody even considered Adaeze. Not because she wasn't capable, but because she quietly worked in the administrative department instead of occupying an executive office. Even some employees underestimated her. One afternoon, while eating homemade rice in the staff cafeteria, Emeka walked in with several senior executives. He glanced at her lunch and laughed. "So this is what the chairman's daughter eats?" The executives laughed politely. Adaeze smiled and continued eating. Emeka wasn't finished. "If you had a little ambition, maybe you'd stop behaving like a poor woman." She looked up calmly. "I'd rather learn how money is made than how it's spent." The room suddenly became quiet. Unknown to both of them, Chief Emmanuel had heard every single word from his office nearby. That evening, he called Adaeze upstairs. She entered, expecting another discussion about work. Instead, she found her father staring through the window at the Lagos skyline. He looked older than usual, more tired. Without saying a word, he opened a safe hidden behind a painting. From inside, he removed a brown envelope, the same envelope she now held at his funeral. He placed it gently into her hands. "Adaeze," he said quietly, "one day this envelope will make people hate you." She frowned. "I don't understand, Daddy." "You don't have to understand today." He smiled sadly. "You only have to promise me one thing." She nodded. "Whatever happens." He paused for several seconds. "Don't open it. Don't give it to anyone. And don't tell anyone what is inside. Not until the day I'm laid to rest." Adaeze stared at him in confusion. "Daddy, why?" Chief Emmanuel reached for her hand. "Because sometimes, the only way to know who truly loves you is to take money out of the equation." She wanted to ask more questions, but before she could, his phone rang. It was an emergency board meeting. He picked up his suit jacket and walked toward the door. As he left, he turned around one last time. "I trust you more than anyone." Those were the last words her father ever spoke to her in private. 3 days later, Chief Emmanuel collapsed during a board meeting. Chief Emmanuel passed away just before sunrise. Within hours, the news spread across Lagos. Radio stations spoke about the death of one of the city's most respected entrepreneurs. Politicians, business leaders, and longtime friends began sending condolence messages. But inside the Okafor family mansion, grief wasn't the only emotion in the air. Greed had already entered the room. Before the funeral arrangements were even completed, Emeka called an emergency family meeting. "We need to discuss the company," he said confidently. Adaeze looked at him in disbelief. "Dad just died." "I know," Emeka replied. "And that's exactly why we can't waste time." Chinedu nodded in agreement. "The investors will panic if they don't know who's taking over." Adaeze remained silent. She couldn't believe they were discussing board positions while their father's body was still in the hospital. That same afternoon, Emeka walked straight into Chief Emmanuel's office. He sat in his father's chair, rested both hands on the expensive mahogany desk, and smiled. "This office has always been mine," he whispered. Outside the glass walls, several employees watched quietly. Some shook their heads. Others looked uncomfortable. Chief Emmanuel hadn't even been buried. Yet the battle for his empire had already begun. A few days later, the family lawyer, Mr. Bello, arrived at the mansion carrying a leather briefcase. Everyone gathered in the living room, expecting him to read the will. Instead, he calmly adjusted his glasses and said something no one expected. "Chief Emmanuel instructed me that his final wishes cannot be carried out until after his funeral." Emeka frowned. "What about the company?" "After the funeral. The inheritance. After the funeral. The properties." "After the funeral." His voice remained calm. Those were his exact instructions. Emeka slammed his hand on the table. "This makes no sense." Mr. Bello simply replied, "It made perfect sense to your father." As he prepared to leave, he paused and looked directly at Adaeze, for only a second. But Emeka noticed. That single glance planted a dangerous seed in his mind. That evening, Adaeze returned to her apartment. She locked the door behind her before taking out the brown envelope. She stared at it for several minutes. She wanted to know what was inside. Every part of her was curious. But she remembered her father's words. "Not until the day I'm laid to rest." Instead of opening it, she placed it inside a small fireproof safe beneath her bed. Then she whispered softly, "I gave you my word, Daddy." Meanwhile, Emeka couldn't sleep. He replayed the lawyer's glance over and over in his head. Finally, he called Chinedu. "I think Dad left something with Ada." "What makes you think that?" The lawyer looked at her. "So, you know Dad. He always trusted her more." Silence filled the phone. Then Chinedu quietly asked, "You think she's hiding money?" Emeka didn't answer immediately. Instead, he smiled. "If she is, we'll find out." The following afternoon, Adaeze visited the company to clear some paperwork. As she entered the reception area, conversation suddenly stopped. Employees looked away. Some whispered. Others avoided eye contact completely. News had spread through the company. People believed Adaeze already knew what was in the will. One staff member approached cautiously. "Madam Ada, congratulations." She looked confused. "For what?" "They said your father left everything to you." Adaeze's face dropped. "That's not true. But rumors travel much faster than the truth." By evening, even relatives were calling her. Some pretended to comfort her. Others asked strange questions. "Did your father leave you anything? Are you managing the company now? When are they sharing the inheritance?" Each call made her heart heavier. She hadn't opened the envelope. She didn't know what was inside, yet everyone had already judged her. 2 nights before the funeral, the tension exploded. Adaeze returned to the family house to help prepare for visitors. As she walked upstairs to her old room, she found Emeka waiting outside the door. His expression was cold. "Open your bag." She froze. "What?" "The bag. I know you're carrying something." Adaeze tightened her grip. "It's personal." Emeka stepped closer. "It belongs to this family. It belongs to Dad. It belongs to all of us." Adaeze looked him straight in the eyes. "No." The word echoed through the hallway. Within seconds, relatives rushed upstairs after hearing the argument. Their aunt spoke first. "Adaeze, if you're hiding something, this isn't the time." "I'm not hiding anything from the family." "Then let us see inside." She shook her head. "I made a promise." Emeka laughed bitterly. "A promise? More important than your own brother's?" Adaeze's voice trembled, but she stood firm. "It's the last promise I made to our father." No one spoke. For a brief moment, even Emeka looked uncertain. Then his face hardened. "If you won't show us willingly, we'll find another way." Adaeze felt a chill run through her body. For the first time since her father's death, she realized the greatest danger wasn't losing the money. It was losing her family. As she walked out of the mansion that night with the brown envelope held tightly against her chest, she had no idea that someone was quietly following her. The morning of Chief Emmanuel Okafor's funeral arrived with grey skies hanging over Lagos. Hundreds of people gathered outside the church. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Business executives stood beside mechanics who had once worked for Chief Emmanuel. Politicians sat beside cleaners. Security guards stood shoulder to shoulder with company directors. It was a reflection of the kind of man he had been. As Adaeze stepped out of the car, she immediately noticed something unusual. Her brothers weren't looking at their father's coffin. They were looking at her handbag. She knew exactly what they were thinking. The brown envelope was still inside, and they believed it contained their father's fortune. She tightened her grip and quietly walked into the church. The funeral service ended peacefully. Family members took turns sharing memories of Chief Emmanuel. Some cried, some smiled, some simply stared at the coffin in silence. Just as the pallbearers prepared to carry the coffin outside, Mr. Bello, the family lawyer, slowly stood up. "Before Chief Emmanuel is laid to rest," he announced, "he instructed me to carry out one final assignment." The entire church became silent. Mr. Bello looked toward Adaeze. "Miss Adaeze, please bring the brown envelope." Gasps echoed across the room. Emeka smiled confidently. He whispered to Chinedu, "I knew it. Everything is inside that envelope." With trembling hands, Adaeze walked toward the altar and handed the envelope to Mr. Bello. For the first time in 3 months, she finally watched someone open it. Inside was no cash, no property documents, no will. Instead, there was a sealed letter and a bank certificate. Mr. Bello unfolded the letter. His voice echoed throughout the church. "To my beloved family, if you are hearing this letter, then my journey on earth has ended." The room fell completely silent. "For years, I watched each of you very closely. I wasn't testing your intelligence. I was testing your character." Emeka's confident smile slowly disappeared. Mr. Bello continued reading. "Inside this trust account is a 100 million. The entire church gasped. Even the choir members exchanged shocked looks. But the next sentence changed everything. "This money does not belong to my children." A stunned silence followed. Mr. Bello looked up before continuing. "It belongs to the people who helped me build this company." Employees stared at one another in disbelief. Some began crying immediately. The letter continued. "For over 30 years, many of my workers sacrificed birthdays, missed family celebrations, worked overtime, and stood by this company even during difficult seasons. Some couldn't afford school fees. Some postponed surgeries. Some retired without enough savings. This money is for them." Tears rolled down the faces of several elderly employees sitting at the back of the church. One cleaner covered her mouth and sobbed uncontrollably. A security guard quietly wiped his eyes. Mr. Bello unfolded the final page. "The trustee of this fund shall be my daughter, Adaeze." Another wave of murmurs swept through the church. "She is the only one who never asked me for money. She understood that wealth is a responsibility before it becomes a privilege." Emeka could no longer control himself. He jumped to his feet. "This is unfair. I'm the eldest son. I helped build this company." Mr. Bello calmly reached into his briefcase again. "I also have something for you." He handed Emeka another file. Still angry, Emeka opened it immediately. His expression changed within seconds. Inside were the company's financial statements, outstanding bank loans, supplier debts, pending tax obligations. More than 2.4 billion in liabilities. Mr. Bello spoke gently. "Chief Emmanuel transferred operational control of the company to you, but he wanted you to understand something." He paused. "Owning a company isn't the same as owning wealth." Emeka realized his father hadn't left him riches. He had left him responsibility. The church remained silent. Nobody celebrated. Nobody mocked him. Even Adaeze looked at her brother with compassion instead of victory. Mr. Bello read the final paragraph. "Money has the power to divide families, but character has the power to rebuild them. If my children learn this lesson, then my greatest investment was never this company. It was raising them." There wasn't a dry eye in the church. As the coffin was finally lowered into the ground, Adaeze whispered softly, "Thank you, Daddy." 6 months later, The Okafor Employee Foundation officially opened. Children of factory workers received scholarships. Retired employees finally received pensions. Medical bills were paid. Small business grants helped dozens of workers start new lives. The company itself slowly recovered under Emeka's leadership. For the first time, he stopped chasing luxury and started learning responsibility. One evening, he visited Adaeze. "I spent years thinking Dad loved you more," he admitted. Adaeze smiled gently. "No, he simply trusted me with what mattered most." Emeka nodded. For the first time since their father's death, the two siblings embraced. As the camera pulled away from the foundation building, Chief Emmanuel's words appeared on the screen. "The richest people are not those who leave the most money behind, but those who leave behind the most changed lives."